I rounded the mangroves at 8:17 a.m. and discovered the HOA had built a resort on my private island. Not figuratively, literally. Cabanas, a tiki bar with a blender the size of a lawnmower, staff in matching polos, and a vinyl banner flapping over my dune that read, "Members Only Resort Opening Weekend." A security guard held out a roll of neon wristbands like he was admitting me to a concert. He looked at my little skiff, looked at my face, and said, "Bracelets are required past the rope." "The rope?" I repeated, staring at the line they'd staked across my beach. "Yes, sir. HOA members and guests only." I set the skiff's bow on the sand, hopped out, and planted my feet on the land my great-uncle bought in 1952, and I've paid taxes on every year since 2001. I smiled, not because I felt polite, but because smiling keeps your hands from doing dumb things. "Cool," I said. "I'm the owner. Where do owners go?" He blinked, then radio clicked. Within 90 seconds, I had a greeting party. Property manager in golf shoes, board president in boat shoes, and a resort director wearing a shirt that said "Vibes" in a font that screamed litigation. Behind them, a blender roared. Someone was cutting limes with the confidence of a person who has never met the Coastal Commission. "Morning," the president chirped. "We're so excited to finally open this amenity. Wristbands are over there." "It's my island," I said, letting the sentence land flat. "I don't need a wristband. You need a recorded easement, or a deed, or literally any legal interest." The manager smiled at a little earthquake. "This is Common Area Tract A," she said, waving toward the sign like signs are deeds. "It's in our CCNRs." "Your CCNRs don't bind property you don't own," I said, still smiling. "And my parcel isn't in your HOA." I held up my phone and tapped a photo. My warranty deed, recorded number, APN, the meets and bounds description that references the mean high water line like a poem only a surveyor could love. This island is fee simple, private. Always has been. Security squared up behind them because facts often get misread as threat. I put my hands in plain sight and turned my phone toward my own camera. Document, not dramatize. Okay, who pulled the permits for the cabanas? For the pile-driven dock, for the septic or desal setup, whichever you picked, because I promise you, you didn't run a municipal water line out here. Blank faces. The blender, undeterred, reached cruising altitude. The resort director tried, bless him. "We were told this is a common HOA island. The developer's map is not a recorded instrument. Pretty brochures don't move boundaries." I pointed to the palm they'd wrapped in cafe lights. "Did your contractor file with the Army Corps for the dock? State Coastal Agency for shoreline development? County building for structures in a high hazard zone? Did anyone file a biological assessment for the mangroves you trimmed into topiary?" "He hired professionals," he said, the universal sentence of people about to meet regulators. "Great, let's meet them." I stepped past him, ignoring the wristband table, and walked the boardwalk they'd laid down like a red carpet over a dune I'd left alone on purpose for nesting season. They'd put in 6 cabanas, 3 daybeds with white curtains, trying and failing to stay white, a splash pool on a platform, and a generator tucked behind woven panels that fooled nobody. A little black box with a hose told me they'd gone the cheap route. A spit-sized desal unit. No permit stickers, no utility locates, no nothing. "Sir, you can't be back here," a second security guard announced as if reciting from a pamphlet. "This area is for members." I am a member. I'm a member of the only 2 clubs that matter out here, the county recorder's office and the tax assessor. I pointed at the water line. You know what that line is called? The mean high water line. Everything above it on this island is private. Everything below it is public trust. You can picnic below that line all you want. It's a lovely place for a sandwich. But you put a deck on my dune without asking and then tried to wristband me off my own sand? The board president's smile stopped trying. "We have a historic right," she said. "The developer always intended." "Recorded where?" I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, and glanced at the property manager. "We have minutes," the manager offered, "from 2003. Minutes don't transfer title. Deeds do. Plats do. Easements do. Your developer intended a lot of things. He sold a lot of postcards. What he didn't do is annex this island into your HOA. He couldn't because the seller never agreed, because the seller was my uncle, and because I have a little folder at home labeled chain of title that would make a title officer cry tears of joy." "Sir," security said again, placing himself between me and the tiki bar like the rum was sacred. I'm going to need you to radio your boss and tell them the owner is on site. The owner is filming, and the owner is calling the Sheriff's Marine Unit and the Coastal Enforcement Hotline. I pulled out my phone, already dialing. And while you're at it, turn off the blender. Food service without a permit is going to make this day worse than it needs to be. They didn't turn off the blender. The sheriff's boat appeared 28 minutes later, nosing around the dock like a shark that had read the building code. 2 deputies stepped onto my sand with the measured slowness of people who fix dumb mornings for living. I gave him the headline, "Private Island, Recorded Deed, No Easement to HOA, Unauthorized Structures, Probable Unpermitted Fill, and Piles. I am not here to fight, I am here to stop the party and start the paperwork." They looked at the wristbands, they looked at the banner. One looked at the trash can with the HOA logo on it, called the sticker Exhibit A, and asked for the person in charge. The property manager floated forward like a boat with a cut anchor line. "We have CCNRs," she said weakly. "We have authority over common amenities." "On your common area," the deputy said, not unkindly. "Do you have a recorded interest in this parcel?" Silence. He nodded once, fished out a little notepad, and wrote no. "Okay, then shut it down." There's practical and then there's theatrical. They chose theatrical. Someone killed the music but left the blender running like a dying engine. "Members," the director said into a portable mic, "we're temporarily closing the resort for safety." Boos and groans rolled across my sand. I watched 3 kids deflate like balloons and felt exactly as popular as a fire code. "Folks," I said to nobody in particular, "I'll explain on your Facebook later. Right now, I'm going to walk the perimeter, photograph every structure, flag every mangrove cut, and draw a little map. Then I'm going to go home, open my binder, and write emails with attachments like a civilized adult. In the meantime, please pack your nonsense and take your wristbands with you." The deputies posted a quick no trespass notice on the bar, because sometimes theater helps. I called the state coastal enforcement hotline and used the right words in the right order. Unpermitted shoreline development, probable fill in a coastal zone, structures on a private parcel without owner consent. I called the Army Corps field office and said unauthorized work below the high tide line, dock with piles, and got a calm, "we'll log and coordinate." I called county code enforcement and asked for a site visit, permits, septic or lack, food service, fire. Then I sat in the skiff, looked at my island with cabanas scribbled on it like graffiti, and laughed. Not happy laughter, the kind that lives on the edge of outrage and disbelief. They built a resort on my private island and tried to wristband me off my own sand. It would have been satire if it hadn't been real. Okay, I had the deed, and next I'd show it to absolutely everyone. Step 1 in any land fight, get boring. Drama makes good thumbnails, paper wins. I dropped my skiff at the mainland dock, drove straight to the county recorder, and started pulling the chain of title like I was flossing the universe. Patent to private ownership, 1908. Deed to my great-uncle, 1952, book 311, page 47. My warranty deed, 2001, instrument 2001-14388. Meets and bounds beginning at the northwest corner of a certain limestone outcrop and proceeding thence along the meander of the mean high water line as surveyed in 1999. I printed the lot and parcel map with my APN highlighted in tax collector yellow. I pulled the HOA's CCNRs, all 12 amendments, and their recorded plat, Lakeside Shores phases 1 through 9. Their world stopped at the shoreline. My island sits offshore like a quiet fact. I printed their glossy amenities plan from the website for laughs. Tract A, lake, boardwalk, clubhouse. Tract B, island resort. Pretty blue shading stretched from their beach, across the channel, and over my parcel like a toddler's crayon. No legal description, no recording stamp, no reference to my APN. The fine print said, "For illustration only." Translation, not worth the toner I burned to print it. Next, permits, or rather, the ghost of permits that should have existed. I searched the county's building portal for anything tied to my APN. Nothing. I searched for permits tied to their HOA name with addresses that didn't look like street numbers. Nothing about docks, piles, or cabanas. I called the building department, they confirmed. No applications, no coastal development permit, no septic permits on any island parcel. Zoning? Your island is zoned conservation shoreline, the planner said. Minimal development allowed, and all of it requires coastal and building permits. The county did not approve any structures on that APN. I called the state coastal agency. They asked me to email photos and location. I sent stills of 6 cabanas, a dock with what looked like pile-driven posts, treated lumber, unwrapped, string lights on palms, a generator behind woven screens, a pump shed, and grating on the dune. I included a map with the MHW line marked and a red outline of my fee ownership area, plus where their structure sat in relation to it. The coastal enforcement officer wrote back in 8 minutes. We're opening a case. The Army Corps field biologist replied an hour later. Potential 404-10 violations. We'll coordinate with state and county. Meanwhile, I built my packet for the HOA because I prefer to give people a chance to choose adulthood before I choose court. Cover letter. Calm ton. As you know, the island you entered and developed is private property owned by me, APN 444-123. I did not grant permission. You have no recorded easement. The attached photos show your structures and grading on my parcel above the mean high water line. I have notified enforcement agencies regarding unpermitted coastal work. Cease all use immediately, remove all persons and property within 48 hours, and provide the name of your legal counsel. Attachments, my deed, recorder's map, tax bill with parcel ID, HOA CCNRs highlighting that common area means the tracts on their plat, the county letter saying no permits, 12 photos with timestamps, and a single screenshot from their website where they labeled Island Resort without a recording reference. I sent it certified and by email to their property manager and board. Then I called a surveyor. Not the kind who waves his hands at a Google map, the kind who can put his boot on the line between public trust and private ownership. We met on the beach at low tide. He found 2 of the old control points my 2001 survey referenced, set 2 new ones away from the dune, and shot the mean high water line from NOAA's current tidal epoch to be safe. It cost money. It erased arguments. He flagged the inland limit of the public trust area and marked the footprint of every cabana in fluorescent pink. Spoiler, they were all planted like little wrongs squarely in my fee land. The board sent a response that managed to be both confident and hollow. It is our understanding that the island you entered and developed is private property owned by me. Agreed, the island appears on our amenity map. The HOA has maintained the island informally for years. Translation, vibes, and a brochure. No recorded instrument attached, no deed, no easement. I forwarded their letter to my attorney, Jenna, who has that tone that makes you sit up straighter, even when you're on your couch. Her reply was 3 bullets in a draft. Number 1, send a cease and desist with a demand to vacate and preserve evidence. Number 2, file a trespass ejectment complaint with a quiet title count and a request for a temporary restraining order. Number 3, copy enforcement on all of it. She attached a TRO application that read like a very polite thunderclap. Defendant HOA has constructed and operated a commercial use on plaintiff's private property without any recorded right. Plaintiff will suffer irreparable harm absent immediate injunctive relief. Balance of equities favors plaintiff, and public interest supports compliance with coastal regulations. While Jenna prepped filings, the coastal inspector visited my island with the sheriff's marine unit and a county code officer. I met them at the dock because apparently this was my week to host tours of bad decisions. The inspector walked the boardwalk, took measurements, peered at the generator, and jotted notes like she was writing a cookbook. Unpermitted structures above MHW, grading in a protected dune, dock piles in tidal waters without authorization. She taped a bright orange notice of violation to the tiki bar and a stop work, stop use order to the nearest cabana. No one occupies these structures until this is resolved. Removal and restoration will be required, she told the property manager who had tagged along to learn consequences. The county code officer wrote a separate notice. Unpermitted structures in a coastal high-hazard area, lack of sanitation permits, potential food service violations, high blender, and a list of fines that read like a menu. Per day, per structure. The sheriff deputy took statements and left with a copy of my deed for his report, because even hats need paperwork. By now, I'd collected a small library. Title, survey, enforcement notices, HOA letters, printouts, photos, and a list of species their resort had disturbed. Mangroves that used to host pelicans were squared off like hedges. Sea oats they'd flattened to lay a boardwalk used to hold the dune together for turtles and storm days. Seagrass under the dock had prop scars like someone couldn't be bothered to idle. None of this was going to play well in a courtroom, which I planned to be in by Friday. Before filing, I did the neighbor thing. I posted a short factual note to the Lakeside Shores group. Hi, I'm the guy with the island. It's private. The HOA does not own it. It's not in your CCNRs. They built a resort there without permits. Agencies have issued stop use orders. If you are excited about the cabanas, I get it. They're coming down. When this is over, I'll host a free naturalist tour so your kids can learn what the island actually is. A little piece of wild that keeps your bay healthy. For now, please stay off. Wristbands don't beat deeds. Half the comments were supportive, a quarter were furious, and the rest were people tagging each other like I'd announced concert pre-sale codes. I turned off notifications, closed my laptop, and watched the tide creep up the bulkhead like a patient finger marking time. The island had been there before any HOA. It would be there after. The only question for the moment was how much money and apology it was going to take to put it back the way it belonged.
Jenna filed the TRO the next morning like she was dropping a pin on a map. Clear, precise, impossible to ignore. We attached the deed, the surveyor's shots of the mean high water line, the county and coastal stop use notices, 15 photos of cabanas sitting squarely in fee land, and a declaration that said the quiet part plainly. Defendant HOA constructed and operated a commercial resort on plaintiff's private parcel without consent or permits. The hearing was quick. The judge, a practical sort with a stack of unlawful detainers on his afternoon docket, flipped through our exhibits and asked the HOA one question. Do you have a recorded interest in the parcel? Their lawyer tried the brochure again. The judge didn't blink. Pretty pictures are not property rights, he said. TRO granted. He read the order into the record. Defendants and their agents are enjoined from entering, occupying, or using the island above the mean high water line. All structures are to remain undisturbed, preserved as evidence, no alteration, no removal. Coordinate with coastal and county for access to post notices and take measurements. Return in 10 days on the preliminary injunction. The sheriff's marine unit posted the order that afternoon. Security peeled wristband stations like Band-Aids. The generator coughed and died. A deputy threaded bright tape across each cabana and stapled a laminated copy of the order at eye level. No entry, court order. The resort director deflated like a pool toy and muttered something about just following the client's lead. He gave me a look halfway between apology and please don't annihilate my LLC. I filed the look under later. The board scheduled an emergency meeting that night at the clubhouse. I showed up early, front row, deed folder, survey plat, a printout of every notice with each agency's letterhead. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and sunscreen. 80 chairs filled fast. People who had sipped blender drinks on my sand 6 hours earlier now held HOA agendas like subpoenas. The president tried to open with a script. We're here to address a misunderstanding with respect to the island amenity. A resident interrupted with a voice that suggests he does not interrupt often. You built a resort on someone else's land. Murmurs. The property manager took the mic and talked about historic intent and developer maps. I held up my deed. She powered through until Jenna stood up from the back. Calm blazer, lawyer posture, voice that makes rooms sit up. The court issued a TRO today because her HOA failed to produce any recorded interest in the island, she said. Continuing to describe it as an amenity invites contempt. Words matter. The board's counsel, who had clearly drawn the short straw, tried 3 angles. Implied easement, historic use, community reliance. Jenna took them down one by one. Implied easements arise between common grantors across split parcels. Not here, she said. Historic use does not grow rights across a title parcel you never touched until last week. Community reliance doesn't beat recorded title, and it certainly doesn't beat the Coastal Act. She finished with a sentence that landed like a gavel. Shut it down, clean it up, and pay for the restoration. Residents, freed to ask questions, did not hold back. Who voted for this? Where are the permits? Why did you think a wristband beats a deed? The resort director, perhaps realizing he was now part of the exhibit list, raised his hand uninvited. We asked about permits. We were told the HOA owned the island and that it was fast track. We have emails. Heads pivoted. The property manager looked like she had swallowed a stapler. The board went into closed session. When they came back, they took 3 votes without spin: to comply with the court order, to authorize counsel to negotiate a stipulated preliminary injunction and a restoration plan with agencies, and to place the property manager on administrative leave pending review. The president tried to graft a 4th motion, form a resort working group, and got stared down by her own treasurer. No, we don't workshop trespass. The next morning, local news ran a drone shot of orange notices flopping on white cabanas, with a lower third that read, HOA resort on private island shut down. My phone turned into a parrot repeating the same 2 texts. Is that your island? And you okay? I replied to the first with a link to the recorder's map and to the second with, yes, paper wins. Back in court 10 days later, we stipulated to a preliminary injunction. Translation, the HOA agreed to keep off, to stop use, and to let regulators run the show while we fought about money. The judge added teeth. Within 30 days, the HOA must submit a removal and restoration plan to coastal and county, demolition and restoration to begin within 45 days of approval, a $250,000 bond posted to guarantee performance, monthly status reports filed with the court, and attorney's fees reserved for later. He also granted our motion to preserve third-party documents. The resort director looked at his counsel, then at me, and nodded like a man who had decided to cooperate. He did more than nod. His lawyer sent Jenna a tranche of emails under a subpoena that painted a simple, ugly picture. The property manager insisted they owned the island. The board president pushed to open by Memorial Date no matter what. An internal thread literally included the sentence, "Permits can be cured after." The contractor had asked about the coastal permit 3 times and was twice told, "We'll handle it." The 3rd time he was told, "It's fine," which is lawyer bait for "it's not fine." Those emails did 2 things. 1, they nuked any argument that the HOA was confused. 2, they gave agencies reasons to be firm. The coastal officer called me with the tone of someone holding a hammer and a calendar. "We're going to require removal, dune restoration, mangrove mitigation plantings, and monitoring. The dock will be removed to the last pile, and the prop scars will need a seagrass plan. We'll coordinate with the Corps. County's handling the generator and any sanitation issues." The board tried one last PR spin. A glossy, "We hear you" email about wanting to create amenities and striving to be good stewards. It landed with the thud of a brochure hurled at a hurricane. Residents wanted dates, not vibes. So we put dates on paper. The stipulated order became a schedule. The HOA hired a coastal restoration firm instead of a party planner. The blender, finally, went quiet.
Removing a resort from a dune is like unscrambling eggs with chopsticks. Slow, careful, no sudden moves. The plan that agencies signed looked like competence and bullet points. First, access. Barge in a small excavator and a pile driver tug for extraction, not a parade of trucks. Set floating silt curtains around the dock footprint to catch turbidity. Stage materials on a barge, not on the beach. Every worker gets a briefing that includes mean high water line, protected vegetation, and don't be the reason we add a week. Phase 1. De-energize and strip. The generator and wiring came out first. Caged, tagged, hauled to an approved facility. The illegal desal unit followed, sweet little stainless cube that never stood a chance. Temporary water containers went back on the barge. The tiki bar came apart like IKEA in reverse. Workers unscrewed more than they pried, because prying snaps roots and patience. No one touched the dune grasses with a shovel. Phase 2. Cabana removal. Crews cut curtains and canvas, bundled and hauled. They lifted roof panels instead of smashing them. Pulled posts straight up with a tripod and chain hoist to minimize disruption. Plugged post holes with matched sand, not whatever's handy. A biologist in a wide-brimmed hat walked the line, calling out sea oats and any mangrove recruits. She was the boss. When she said stop, everyone stopped. Phase 3. Boardwalk and deck. The path that had been laid over the dune came up in strips. Crews shook sand off planks back onto the dune, like returning stolen goods. Every plank got scanned for screws before stacking, because nails and tide pools are a bad friendship. Beneath, we found flattened vegetation. The biologist winced and noted crush damage for the mitigation ledger. Phase 4. Piles and dock. The worst offenders were the dock piles pressure-treated posts, driven into tidal bottom without a permit. The contractor brought a small vibratory extractor on a barge, wrapped the piles in a sleeve to catch slough, and pulled them straight up. Some refused, so they were cut a foot below the mud line and capped with an inert plug. Not ideal, not adding more damage. The decking was bundled and lifted out with a knuckle boom. The seagrass beneath was scarred, prop arcs etched pale like crop circles. A seagrass mitigation plan went into the binder. Temporary marker buoys to keep boats off, transplanting shoots from a donor bed, and a no-motor zone until regrowth hit thresholds. Phase 5. Dune Restoration. This was the part that mattered. The restoration firm, let's call them Shoreright, graded ruts lightly with rakes, not blades. They installed sand fencing and chevrons to catch wind-borne sand where the boardwalk had carved a flat. They planted sea oats, dune panic grass, and beach elder in rows that looked sparse because that's how dunes breathe. Every plug got a drink. Every plug got a protector tube. They added core logs at the toe of the dune to reduce wave nibble. They placed stay-off signs that didn't yell. They explained. Active restoration, plants growing, thank you. Mangrove mitigation wasn't performative, it was arithmetic. For the illegal trimming, 3 times the cut volume in new plantings in a protected zone below MHW, staked and monitored for 2 years. Mangroves don't care about PR. They care about salinity, mud, and not being chopped into hedges. The HOA would pay for maintenance. The county added a sting. Hire a certified arborist for any future mangrove work on their side, or pay per cut. The fines were boring and brutal. County code issued per-day fines for each cabana, plus separate violations for unpermitted electrical and temporary food service. The coastal agency levied civil penalties for development without a permit in a coastal zone and for grading on a dune. The Corps sent a notice of unauthorized structures under Section 10 and unauthorized fill under Section 404, converting to a resolved upon removal letter once the piles were gone. Total, mid-5 figures in fines, low 6 in removal and restoration, a bond held until plants survived 2 growing seasons, and a promise to post a compliance update on their website so the next board wouldn't forget and rebuild with better curtains. Residents, to their credit, didn't riot. Some were mad about lost cabanas, more were mad about the bill. The board called a special meeting to approve a restoration assessment. It passed after a speech from a mom who held up a photo of her kid with a turtle painting from a school field trip. She said, "They told our kids the island is a nursery. We built a bar on their nursery. We can afford to fix it." The treasurer, who had become the voice of adulting, added the numbers without flinching. He said, "We will cut other budget items and we will never do this again." We negotiated a civil settlement parallel to the regulatory grind. The HOA signed a stipulated judgment on the trespass and ejectment counts. They acknowledged I owned the island, disclaimed any interest, and agreed to a recorded non-annexation and non-use covenant, a useful thing that says in plain language, not your tract, not now, not later, and paid my attorney's fees. In exchange, I waived punitive damages and focused on restoration over retribution. Quick litigation is cheaper than long war. Also, I prefer fences to trophies. When the dust, sand, settled, the island looked like itself again, only a little awkward with baby plants and sand fences. The orange notices came down. In their place, a small sign at the landing. Private island, above mean high waterline. Public trust, below. Restoration in progress, please respect. No wristbands, no vibes. We also built a better amenity without calling it one. Working with the state and county, we set up a limited docent program. 4 Saturdays a year, I'd take 10 lakeside kids and their parents on a below mean high water seagrass walk and a dune edge talk from the public side. No stepping on plantings, no picnics on my sand, but a chance to see why the island exists and why resort was the wrong word for something that nurses shorebirds and breaks storm teeth. And yes, the blender went somewhere useful. A church rummage sale. Someone's backyard margaritas are better for the coast than a tiki fantasy on a dune.
When you take a resort down to studs and sand, the aftermath is strangely quiet. No music, no generators, just wind and gulls and the slow hiss of plantings learning their job. The HOA's world changed in smaller, better ways. A new property manager who talks to the recorder before she talks to a contractor. A standing permits or pause policy that requires stamped approvals for any project within a mile of tide or marsh. An annual board training with a county planner and the coastal officer who now brings a slideshow titled "Pretty Brochures Are Not Law." They paid, not in bankruptcy, not in blood, but in checks that smart when they clear. The fines taught the budget a lesson. The restoration taught the culture one. The non-annexation and non-use covenant got recorded with the county, indexed to their CC&Rs and to my APN, so a future board can't forget the island isn't theirs because a developer shaded something blue 20 years ago. The resort director salvaged his company by cooperating early, paying his slice of fines, and writing a memo to self titled "Don't Take HOA Word for Title." He now requires proof of ownership or an executed license before he sets a post. He sent me a thank you email that read like a toothbrush. Useful, slightly painful. "You saved my business by stopping me," he wrote. Fair. I kept my island and gained a project, stewardship. I put a game camera on the dune to catch ghost crabs and night herons. I took monthly photos from the same spot and uploaded them to a tiny page titled Island Log. I added a sentence to the top. Above high tide, private. Below, public. Together, a system. Priya, because every story needs a Priya, organized 3 cleanup days on the mainland shoreline opposite the island so plastic had fewer chances to cross the channel. We pulled 13 bags the first morning, 8 the next, 5 the last. Progress is measured in less. If you're here because your HOA, neighbor, or developer is waving an amenities map over your deed, here's the playbook I wish someone had handed me on day 1. Not legal advice, laws go weird near water, but patterns help. Start boring. Deed, plat, APN map from the recorder and tax assessor. Print the recorded CC&Rs and plats for the HOA. Highlight where their world ends. Common area tract means the tracks on their plat, not the thing they wish was theirs. Find the line that matters. On coasts, that's usually the mean high water line. Hire a surveyor who can shoot current MHW and tie it to your deed. Flags beat feelings. Use the right hotlines. County Code, State Coastal Agency, Army Corps if anything touched below MHW. Say unpermitted development and structures in a coastal zone. Agency triage teams are real. Let them work. Film, don't fight. Walk, shoot, date stamp. Capture the blender and the bar, but also the post holes and the crushed plants. Don't pull a single stake yourself. File like an adult. TROs exist for a reason. Ask for a stop use and an order to keep everyone off while regulators map the damage. Judges like deeds and maps. Bring both. Resist the brochure defense. If someone waives amenity plans, respond with "recorded instrument, please." Brochures are art. Title is law. Restore, then punish. Agencies will push you to focus on removal and restoration before punishment. Let them. Fines fix budgets, plants fix coasts. Record the lesson. A non-annexation and non-use covenant stapled to the public record is future-proofing. Boards change, paper stays. Teach a little. Anger burns fast. Education lasts long. A docent day, a sign that explains public trust, a kid with a Shell ID card, those buy you fewer, but the wristbands emails. Keep your one small. The internet loves owner destroys HOA. The coast needs you to be steady. Refunds will be argued, fines will be paid, plants will grow. Tell that story. Costs? My side, survey, attorney, time. Their side, fines, demolition, restoration, bond, manager buyout. In total, not ruin, but enough for everyone to remember. I didn't ask for punitive damages or a golden apology plaque on a stump. I wanted the island back, a covenant recorded, and a calendar where my Saturdays aren't for court. There was a moment 2 months after the last sand fence went up. An egret landed where a daybed had been and stabbed at a crab that did not read press releases. The mean high water line traced the dune like the pen line in my deed. I stood on my sand, no wristband, no rope, and said, "We're good," out loud, to nobody, which is also to say, to myself. If you're fighting your own map versus deed battle, breathe. Start at the recorder. Call the hotlines. Let inspectors do their jobs. Hire a surveyor. Ask a judge for the pause. Then restore the thing, record the lesson, and go quiet on purpose. If this helped, share it with the neighbor who forwards HOA newsletters like their law. Drop your questions: coastal permits, mean high water, surveys, bonds. And I'll rope in Jenna or the biologist into a Q&A. And if a security guard ever tries to wristband you off your own sand, smile, hold up your deed, and say the line that saved me. Wristbands don't beat recorded title. Then call the sheriff. The blender can wait.